Jai Shri Radhe, Sab Vaishnav Ko Sadar, Saprem Jai Shri Krishna. Continuing with the reading of the 252 Vaishnavas. Today is day 119 and Varta 95 to complete and 96. Bhav Prakash to yesterday's story, which is a repetition. The moral of this story is that the devotee's heart becomes pure through the process of chanting the 8-syllable mantra. With the chanting of the 5-syllable mantra, the divine mood of separation is given. Then Sri Govardhanaji grants the experience of his divine pastimes. Vaishnavas should constantly chant the 8 and 5-syllable mantras. The reason why Sri Gosaiji got Ram Das to do this chanting while sitting in front of the Dandavati Shila is that the Dandavati Shila represents the lotus feet of Sri Giriraji, who is the foremost servant of the Lord, Haridasa Varya. There is no doubt that when a devotee stays close to Sri Giriraji, they will soon attain the nectar of the Lord's person and pastimes. Part 1 continued. Ram Das's seva to Sri Govardhanaji was very loving. After the Lord's lunchtime arti, he would go into the Lord's kitchen and partake of Mahaprasad. He would get the leftovers of Sri Gosaiji's plate. He survived on this prasad alone. In the evenings, after the completion of the evening services, he would listen to Sri Gosaiji's spoken discourses. Then he would go back to his own hut and read and sing about the Lord. Sometimes a few Vaishnavas would come there to listen. Then he would give them all some Mahaprasad. He would go to sleep after snacking on some roasted chickpeas. He would wake up early, well before dawn, and perform his morning ablutions, toilet, teeth cleaning, and bath. Then he would start his seva to Srinathji. When he had completed the morning seva, he would go to Govind Swami's Kadam Kandi and sit with him. Govind Swami would sing and Srinathji would dance. Ram Das got to watch this. In this way, Sri Govardhanaji was very merciful to Ram Das. After many days had passed, Sri Gosaiji began to get ready to return to Gokul. Ram Das asked him, "O Maharaj, when will you be coming back?" Sri Gosaiji said, "I will come back very soon. Meanwhile, serve Srinathji very carefully." Thus concludes Varta 95, the story of Ram Das, who was the recipient of Sri Gosaiji's great grace, and whose story truly has no end. Continuing with Varta 96, the story of Vranja, an Udambara Brahmin who lived in Gujarat in a village named Kapadwanaj. This is a devotee of sattvic disposition. In the eternal Leela, his name is Sangini, who manifests from Nagavelika and is thus a form of her divine loving sentiment. Part 1. Vranja lived as an Avaduta, an extreme ascetic, and had never been married. Once when Sri Gosaiji was in Gujarat, Vranja had been initiated with the Lord's name. Vranja then supplicated Sri Gosaiji, "O Maharaj, I own nothing and I am an ascetic. What should I do with my life? Please bless me with your answer." Sri Gosaiji instructed him to offer the preparations to Sri Gosai Thakurji and accept them back as Mahaprasad. Always be happy to cook in this way and never consider it to be in any way troublesome. This activity will benefit you greatly. Vranja requested Sri Gosaiji to grant him some seva, to whom he would be able to make the offerings. Sri Gosaiji blessed Vranja with the Brahma Sambandh initiation and then presented him with the Sevya Swarup in the form of one red prasadi kulle, or festival turban, of Sri Navaneet Priyaji. He commanded Vranja, "Please regard your Sri Thakurji as dearer to you than your life itself. Regulate your life with daily disciplines, cook and offer everything to him, and only ever eat Mahaprasad." Sri Gosaiji then returned to Gokul. After some time, Vranja thought that he should go to Gokul to see his Guru and render him some service. He arrived in Gokul before too long, had the holy sight of Sri Navaneet Priyaji, and then went to Sri Gosaiji's Baitak and bowed low before him. Sri Gosaiji greeted him, "O Vranja, it has been a long time. Will you be staying here for a while?" Vranja replied that he would like to do some personal service for Sri Gosaiji, and Sri Gosaiji happily accepted. After this, Vranja constantly served Sri Gosaiji and ate from his prasadi leftovers. He spent 3 days like this. Then Sri Gosaiji asked him, "O Vranja, where are you having your Mahaprasad?" Vranja replied, "I have been eating your prasadi leftovers. Then some of your other servants told me to do my own cooking and partake of Mahaprasad in this way. Please tell me, what should I do?" Shri Gosaiji asked Renda if he had any money. He replied that he had 12 coins. Shri Gosaiji then instructed him to cook and make offerings to Shri Thakurji before partaking of the prasad. Renda said that he would do exactly that. Shri Gosaiji told him there was an elderly lady, also a Brahmin, living nearby, and that she should go to live and make seva with her. Bhav Prakash. By giving Renda this instruction to live and serve with the elderly lady, Shri Gosaiji was telling him that without the association of other devotees, the path of grace cannot come to full fruition. In the eternal Leela, this lady was a very close Sakhi of Sri Chandravaliji, named Shyama. She and Sangini were always together. Shyama would impart direct knowledge of Sri Thakurji's pastimes, so Sri Gosaiji, knowing their previous relationship to have been very tight, wanted the two of them to be in each other's company again. Part 1 continued. Renda bowed to his guru and said, "O Maharaj, I shall do as you say." Shri Gosaiji went to rest, as did Renda. In the morning he went to see the elderly lady, who removed his doubts by saying, "O Renda, my home is your home. I shall do as you request. You never go to anyone's home, so how it is that you have come here today?" Renda said, "I have 12 coins. I shall beg for supplies. If my Shri Thakurji could reign here for some days, then I shall happily stay here in Gokul." She replied, "Happily bring your Shri Thakurji here. You can serve Shri Gosaiji and I shall call when the Mahaprasad is ready for you to have." Renda gave her the 12 coins and brought his Shri Thakurji to her house. Some days passed in this way. He would beg for supplies, grains, etc. in the village. Then one evening Shri Gosaiji asked him, "Oh Renda, how are you supporting yourself nowadays?" He replied, "My Shri Thakurji is happily residing at that elderly lady's home. I go to beg in the village and bring the supplies home. We live nicely." Shri Gosaiji then asked him from whom he was taking the supplies. He replied that he begged from Shri Gosaiji's relatives of Bhatt caste, some from Shri Gosaiji's sevaks, and from some Brajvasis. Shri Gosaiji forbade him henceforth from taking anything from Bhatts, sevaks, or anyone else who had received any kind of stipend from him himself. He said that he could continue to take from the Brajvasis. Renda agreed to do just that, and he stopped asking for anything from the temple cooks and other servants. Shri Gosaiji was happy with Renda's compliance. Part 2. Again, one day in the middle of the night, Shri Gosaiji was happily sitting in his bed. He inquired of Renda, "Do you like living in Gokul?" Renda replied, "O Maharaj, you my all and everything, and the Lord's pastimes are eternally played here. Therefore, with your blessings, yes, I am very happy here. However, I have not yet had direct experience of the Lord. It will happen if you so ordain." Shri Gosaiji told him, "Tomorrow, just after the morning Mangal Aarti, go alone to Ramanreti. You will experience something there." Renda was happy and was so looking forward to it that he could not fall asleep. In the early morning he got up, performed his morning ablutions, bathed in Sri Yamunaji, came to Shri Gosaiji's Batak, bowed low to him and offered some seva for Shri Gosaiji's comfort. Shri Gosaiji instructed him, "After the morning services, go to bathe at the Gop Koop, the cowherd's well, and then proceed to Ramanreti. Something will happen there." Renda started out after the morning Aarti service. He bathed at the well and sat down to recite the 5-syllable mantra. He had completed 5 rosaries when he heard the sounds of Shri Thakurji's flute. Renda became crazy with longing to see him, and shortly afterwards Shri Thakurji appeared along with Shri Balaram. When he had their holy sight, Renda fainted. He was unconscious. Shri Thakurji took the flower garland from round his neck, draped it over Renda, and then departed. Afternoon came. The elderly lady had completed their Shri Thakurji's seva. She covered up the Mahaprasad and put it to one side, and then went to Shri Gosaiji whilst looking for Renda everywhere. She then inquired of Shri Gosaiji, "O Maharaj, I have looked for Renda everywhere but cannot find him. He has not partaken of Mahaprasad." Shri Gosaiji informed her that Renda was in Ramanreti. "Please bring him back from there." She immediately bowed to Shri Gosaiji and went to Ramanreti. She found Renda unconscious. He was wearing a garland of lovely lilies. The elderly lady considered, "Today Renda has received the great grace of the Lord. This garland must be the Lord's." She took half of the garland and tied it into her upper garment, and then she woke Renda up. It took an hour and a half for him to come round. She asked him what had happened. Renda said, "Oh, I cannot hide it from you. With the grace of Shri Gosaiji, Shri Thakurji granted me his holy sight, but not for very long." The lady piped up, "Oh Renda, you are the most fortunate, for you have had the holy sight of Shri Thakurji. Come on now, it's time to enter Shri Gosaiji's service." Renda and the elderly lady went home and partook of Mahaprasad. Renda came back to himself. She then told him that she had taken half of the garland and asked him if she could keep it, saying that she would give it back if he wanted, since it was he who had been graced with it. We will continue the story from here tomorrow. Aaj ke Anand ki jai. Jai Shri Krishna, Jai Jai Shri Radhe.